the open canvas, okay, in which everything is possible to happen, and at the same time be very focused on achieving impact, even it's a small impact, even if it's a quick win. That's really important for the teams. That's really important for everyone that is part of the process. So it's really hard to find this balance between all the energy that you put on working with guys that are really open-minded, really open to, well, any kind of solutions for a specific problem, but at the same time to working with these guys that are on their daily basis, working with solving the issues that all our citizens are dealing on their daily basis. So it's really hard to balance that, and at the same time, because this is really important for us in terms of the strategy that we are defining. And I will go to your question, which is more related with the ecosystem. And as I've said, we are working on this kind of twofold approach. Okay, on one hand, working with the ecosystem, working with the in the open way with the society, but at the same time, we should look at the heart and soul of the municipality, which in the end are the ones responsible for all the mess that happens in the city. So, and that's, I think, what was the innovative approach that we had. Okay, we should not neglect. And the beginning, let me also say that. And the beginning, when I was invited by the vice mayor or the council man in that time to help the municipality in creating this innovation, digital transition, we are really excited with all the opportunities that we have, and let's try to build this amazing program to link entrepreneurs, creative industries, and things like that, and then all these challenges that the citizens can identify, and then we will build an amazing city. Well, we failed, okay? We failed because we were neglecting the key ingredient in the municipality, which are all the men and women power that the municipality has, all the teams that in the end, as I've said, are solving all the small and big issues that the city has to address. So it's really important to have all this in mind, to have all these guys on our side, and to be able to do it, we need some methodology, we need to have this blueprint that we have that we are still trying to develop. But at least for now, I think that everyone is really excited with open the Porto Innovation Hub for them and to inviting them to explore. So regarding the ecosystem, as Andrea was saying, it's really hard once again, and there's where we really don't have the perfect recipe. We have some instruments that we are making available. For instance, we have an open call every year to fund activities from the ecosystem, and obviously it's really exciting for us to see how a huge number of activities are new every year. Not because the initiatives that we had in the previous year failed, no, because the initiatives that we have supported in the previous editions are moving forward without our support. For instance, okay, it's not a requirement. You can apply again. It's possible, but it's really important for us to see how the ecosystem is growing, is finding other ways to develop their own activities. That's really important. So, well. Once again, it's our work, especially on finding this balancing between the energy that we need to put on having this open canvas, and at the same time to find some methodology, some instruments that could help everyone on a very agile way to have these quick wins, okay, and really feeling that innovation is really in the city transformation, okay.
Sorry. I just had a thought that instead of using a blueprint, maybe we are making maps. We are finding ways how to navigate in the jungle, and built from experience or other people's experience, you can find maps. So you can basically go anywhere, but you still have to respect the map. But actually, I was going to comment on something else you said about measuring the impact. I've been very much focusing on measuring things because first of all you have to of course know the difference between results and effects and impacts, but also it's important that you decide what is a successful outcome for me doing this, and how do I measure if this project was successful? Because if I don't do that, it will only be measured by head count and turnover, and maybe it wasn't. That's why I did this project, to earn a lot of money. And if it wasn't only about turnover. You have to define very clearly at probably from day one of the project, what do I want to achieve and how do I know if it works? And there I think digital tools can be very, very useful, and measuring in unusual ways and asking people questions. And that is not that easy to ask people questions that they will answer in a way that you can use.
I think this all kind of leads us to some important topics. One is culture, that you need to pick up on, and thinking on the case of Porto, I think that Porto is really specific in how its community self-organizes very often. So it's good to know that, for instance, Porto Digital's approach is not to force, but also to identify. But understanding this is something that comes from how to map it, how to understand its relations, and to collect data in some sense. So now turning this into a question is the hard challenge.
We are following you.
Yeah. So far,
in a good way.
Is it?
this is
You're doing good.
Yeah, thank you. But this is terrible moderation when I do opinions instead of asking questions. But yeah, I do believe that we don't often see, except for the examples, obviously, that you were just sharing, Martin, we don't often see that corporations, artists, and even public stakeholders cooperate that much or that often, you know. And maybe it's how you measure the impact and how you communicate it, because usually corporations are really profit-oriented and they don't look beyond that. And obviously there's other notable exceptions, such as marketing budgets that all corporations have, and they spend it on events or whatnot, where there are artists. But this is obviously not enough when we want to do innovation. And there's people who have the tech power, there's people who have the intelligentsia, let's call it like that, to disrupt. How do we measure impact, or what kind of relevant data do you feel that can empower this type of relations? In your experience, is there any specific measurement or any data that you feel relevant to empower this type of relations and to foster more innovation? Just for an example, maybe this is a little bit far out, but I usually go to Barcelona and think about what Alda Colau is doing, collecting data for the citizens to promote innovation, that it's for the purpose of empowering their citizens. But this is one way to do it. Is there any other way that you've been finding that it's useful? I don't know if, Paul, you want to start? Putting you on the spot here.
Yeah, no, it's really a very important question, because, well, we are really crazy about the impact. We're really crazy in defining KPIs that will guide us. For instance, I was having a fight with my team just before coming in, because, for instance, we have investing a lot on expanding our Wi-Fi network, for instance. We have free Wi-Fi everywhere in the city. We have this concept of immersive Wi-Fi. And the municipality side, based on the numbers, okay, based on monitoring the development of the network, that we should continue investing on expanding this. It doesn't go against what the private sector is doing on investing on the 5G networks, things like that. It's kind of a complementary approach. It's really aligned with the market, because we have also this market-oriented perspective. But we were not able, because some small stupid errors that the team made. Sometimes the team is not perfect. We are not able to have numbers from the last 3 months. So it's really bad for us, because we really need to have these numbers. I'm giving this example because it's a very simple example on how we can measure the impact of a service, okay? It's connectivity, is giving access to the internet, so it's really easy for us to measure the number of people that are using. Obviously we can and we should evaluate the quality of the service that we are providing, if it's contributing for reducing the gap of internet accessibility and things like that. But the basic number is, are we or not seeing an increase usage of our network in the same, I would say, pace of the expansion of the network. It's very simple, okay? But there are others, other kind of investments. For instance, measure the impact of creating the Port Innovation Hub. It's really hard. Okay, it's really hard. Or measure the impact of creating this thing called doing business, or other initiatives that we are developing. It's really hard to create and to see how it will have some results, and at the same time will really change the way people is doing things. So we shall tend to say that this is not a sprint. Okay, this is not something that we will be able to achieve a really high impact on the next day. This is a long term process. So we should be very resilient. We should really kind of have kind of a light that guides us. So I'm giving these two examples because they are really different examples. On one side, it's really easy to measure the impact, or at least to kind of monitoring the way the investments that we are doing with public funding, with public money, have impact in our society. On the other side, we really need to go slowly, try once again to figure out what could be these small quick wins, the small examples on how we are now seeing things on a different perspective, because I think it's really important when we have this open canvas, when we are open our door to the artists, to the creative industry, that we are using all these bright minds as a different perspective for the society, and this is really important for us. And in the end, we believe, and we have now results that are showing us that this different perspective, these new ways to see things are really helping us. And I think that the project that we have in Miguel Bombarda is a good example on that, because I think it's the result of this different perspective on how to address a very concrete issue on the city. Okay.
I was thinking while Paulo was talking that we live in a data era, and this is very important. And even in the Bombarda, digital Bombarda project that we have, we plan to use data and to use data to be more productive, but also to measure the impact of the actions we plan to do in the neighborhood. And that's very important, to have quantitative measurement of the actions we do, but also, and that's also sometimes the difference between creatives and engineers, or the economic side of it, or the creative side of it. But we need to keep in mind that even in research, investigation projects, very serious ones in the academia, we use not only quantitative data to analyze a situation, but also a qualitative data for and a qualitative analysis to evaluate impact. So and sometimes this is the collection of success stories and put faces on the stories that we are telling. That also measure and inform us back of if you are doing or not the good thing, or if you are in a good path or not. So we cannot just rely. It's not possible, like Paulo was saying. It's not possible for one side. We need to deal with it and live with it. But also not necessary. We need to also see the more human side of it. Economics doesn't measure everything, so we need to accept that in a way.
Just very briefly, I think that we are now living a data-driven decision-making, and I really like that approach because it's make everything more clear, more transparent. But at the same time, I think that the gut feeling that we sometimes have should also be used to drive us, okay? And be part of these ecosystems sometimes are really, yeah, it's a different way of doing it. Okay, and well, finding the balance is key for this, but we should not forget that this gut feeling that sometimes are driving us is key for helping us moving forward. Okay.
But then let me just add another stop, and I will pass you on. Sorry, Martin. Also, Andre was talking about the cooperation between private, between public, between different players. You want to also address that question? And that's also what is Paulo saying is an example within the municipality, and not all the municipalities are the same, as we know, and even within the municipality, not all the departments are the same, and Paulo was addressing the difficulties and the challenge within a huge ship that is a municipality, that is really hard to turn because it's really involves a lot of people and so on. And there are challenges inside of course, the organization on implementing innovation mentalities, because this, what Paulo is saying, is an example of openness to this collaboration. And sometimes what we need to question is how much power the closeness give us instead of the being open to be close. How much risk we need to take to admit that we don't know the recipes or know to do everything and need to cooperate with different stakeholders in the city, and that will not make you weaker but stronger because you will partner with people that will make you doing a better job in the end.
Yeah, one of the basic problems is that we don't know where we're going. We know the journey there, but the idea of a public administrator working with a classical composer is that we're going to arrive somewhere where we didn't have an idea of. But like you say, sometimes as running a ship like this, for me, we are also driven by, financed by the municipality of Botkyrka, and sometimes I feel like I'm in forestry. I'm planting a seed that will become a tree in 80 years, and if it's healthy. But sometimes things happen through disruption as well. And I think the one strong impact can actually be the examples that a piano player can collaborate with a truck industry, that an accountant, public accountant can collaborate with an actor and a musician, that you can do things that you never imagined would happen. And just example, someone else did it in Sweden or in Portugal or in Spain, and suddenly you rise the level of possibilities of what can be achieved. And of course, one of the problems is that about 90–95% of everyone employed in a public administration or a private company work very consistently on status quo. It should be the same today as it was yesterday and tomorrow. And we are these odd people who try to disturb the process and make new things. But if we can locate these weird people in different organizations, and if we can collaborate with them, this is what we did in the Learning Labs Cross Innovation. If we can find them and do exciting things with them, I see a prosperous future.
Okay, so I will do terrible moderating again, just for this one time. But this conversation leads me to something that happened in the United States in the 90s, which was the coming of the Roland 808, TR-808 synthesizer, that it was a failure completely. And it turns out it's the most influential synthesizer that we have nowadays, just because we now are seeing it being used on all hip-hop. It was in the birth of techno, just because it was a failure commercially, and then other people were able to acquire it and start using it in disruptive ways. So this is, to me, always kind of an example of how innovation and disruption can happen, and maybe on how we are too eager on wanting results immediately and don't leave time for people to be able to act with the technologies that we are empowering them to, and maybe reach other communities that are often left out, you know. And so just to wrap it up and to do a final question, which is, how do you believe that hubs should act to not only evolve a further, more diverse community, and do you seek to do it? I mean, Porto Municipality has been doing it in very different ways. I know that we have associations acting in different localizations that are not only looking for those of us that are privileged enough to engage with innovation, but is this something that we should try to find a balance between results and fostering and empowering communities that will give us results later on? I don't know if any one of you want to pick this up.
Can I start this
Yeah,
time?
please.
I think you should not stress so much that it has to become a result, because that's very disturbing for creativity. I think you should focus more on play, and play like small children play, that you just things just happen and you invent as you go, and you have fun. And I always say that this is the way people like us have fun. And suddenly you emerge at something exciting, and you realize, because you have your original profession, that you can do something of this. And not necessarily saying, okay, we're going to go from A to B, because we might realize we're going from A to zebra, or from A to 21, or finding out, using all the possible ways, and just follow the road and see where it ends.
Okay. Well, it's important to have this playground. Obviously, we are in the end all kids, but at the same time, well, in the end, we at least should know what drives us. Okay, because sometimes people forget that in the end, we need to open some doors. Okay, we need to be able, be able to use this extra energy that could lead us to open a door, to build the door, and to open the door for this new perspective of the world, I'll say. But at least let's build the door. Let's try to build this door that in the end we should open it. But yeah, it's hard to find the balance. We need good politicians to help us have some room for these good feelings that, well, in the end, are the ones that will drive us. But yeah, we are here to once again to hear from you and to play with you.
Let's play.
You have the closing words.
That was my last words.
Let's play.
Let's
Okay.
play.
If this is something that we can take from this, it's playing. It's fun, and it's profitable, maybe, or not. I don't know, but it's good. Thank you. This is it.
Can I give some just... I will seize the moment that I'm with the mic in my hand, and because this is the... No, this is not last session. We are making a last... Yes, so just forget what I was trying to say. And yeah, I will talk in a minute.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You can ask these questions now.
Can we now open the back speakers again? Sorry.
Just push the button with one finger.
Γιατί είναι off-centered, είναι έτσι τα κείμενα της Δάφνης, ή κουνήθηκε η οθόνη, ή ο προτζέκτορας. Έχουμε κάτι με full εικόνα για να δούμε. Δεν καταλάβουμε με αυτό.
Εκεί είναι centered.
Α, οκ.
Οπότε...
Δεν βάζεις μια φωτογραφία για να δούμε.
Φαίνεται εντελώς centered.
Ναι, όχι. Είναι πολύ πιθανό κουνήσαν τον προτζέκτορα. Να βάλει τώρα ένα. Ναι. Εντάξει, Γιάννη. Hey. So, if we can all gather up for one very last final session. Yep. Can we all join together for the final keynote of today's meeting? Please. It's you normally doing these kind of things. You're better than me. Shit. Come on, people. I mean, when Dubravka says it, you all come on the spot. And now it's me talking and no one shows up. You made my argument, Tessa. It's not, I hope. Τα έπαιξες να Βάρβαρα, σε βλέπω. Σε εξεφανώσαμε. Okay, great. Nice to have you back here. Before going for the final keynote of this inspiring day, I should tell you that there is more. Okay, but at least it's out in the sun, so we have to catch the sun, so we have to hurry up. So let's gather up to have this final inspiring keynote. Before that, some technical stuff. Within the program, there is a typo. So for tomorrow's program, which is mostly for ECHN members, in the morning, it's in Aptec and not in Palacio de Escoreiros as it writes here. So we are meeting in Aptec. So this is a mistake. Please don't get confused and come here. We're not going to be here. So yeah, be careful. Oh, the badges and the rest of the materials are correct, yeah. Great. So this final keynote wants to bring in together everything we've heard today, and is from Daphne Dragona. We have been working from time to time for several years, and yeah, her theme is Can Arts Degrow? And yeah, it's up to you, Daphne. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Oop, does it? Okay. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for staying. Thank you very much for the invitation, Vasily. A big thanks also to David Berger and to Natasha Alkuriotti for also inviting me to be here and also for writing an essay to the publication that David presented just a while ago. I am a curator and a writer. And today I would like to speak about some of the challenges that the artistic and the cultural sector is facing with reference to the topics of this conference. I feel quite happy that already we have heard so many interesting, rich in content and informative positions. I myself have learned really a lot that address the role of education, of collaboration and innovation in the development of the creative sector while having the sustainability principles in mind. Like now, what I would like to bring into the conversation with my talk is an emphasis on the following. Can we secure the sustainability of the cultural sector while also respecting the sustainability of the planet? This would be my first and most important question. Which practices might still be needed while we talk about innovation and development? And finally, what can approaches like the one of degrowth bring to this discourse? I have divided my talk in 3 parts so that it's easier to follow. Yeah, we'll start right away. So I guess no matter how optimist or pessimist we are, I think we have reached the stage that we would all agree that we live in rather uneasy times. We live in the shadow of a planetary emergency and a generalized crisis. When the present very much feels intolerable and the future sometimes feels even impossible. We are confronted with extreme weather phenomena, with resources depletion, with species extinction. And these are problems that not only us, but also that the generations that will follow will have to face. Now, different scholars from the fields of anthropology, sociology, have talked about this moment that we're living in by referring to it as a moment that we are invited to learn to live in the ruins. And this is there's a lot of light, which is a nice thing, but not so good for the projection. So this is an image from a work that I really love by Superflux. It's an art and design studio in UK. It's a video which is called The Window View, and it's part of the Refuge for Resurgence. And what it captures is basically a city, an urban environment that has already fallen apart, and the living environment, the nature is taking over. Now, to start a bit, focusing a bit more on what I want to say. So different scholars have talked about the ruins. One of them that writes about it in a very beautiful way is Anna Ching. And this is a quotation from her book, The Mushroom at the End of the World, where she says that in a global state of precarity, we don't have choices other than looking for life in this ruin. More famously, most famously, you also might know Donna Haraway book and the work on staying with the trouble. Now, what is the trouble? What are the ruins? I think that it is quite clear that when we talk about ruins, these are basically the ruins of progress. These are the ruins of the so-called, in a way, modern world, a mostly privileged, Western, and careless world. And the growth that was imposed on the a word that made progress a principle and a goal and ignored the boundaries that were meant to be respected and set by the planet itself. I have here a quote by Maria Belén Sáez de Ibarra that specifically says that modernity naturalized concepts of finance, progress and growth imposed on the ways community, survival and of course life have long been understood. And the problem with growth is that our understanding of time also kind of changes, because time somehow then only becomes linear, time becomes money, time becomes velocity and acceleration, and different temporalities, different rhythms, different life circles are set aside, are not taken into consideration. So the problem with the ruins is that, of course, they are not safe places, and ruins are not the same for all of us. Ruins might be meant metaphorically, but they might also be meant very, very literally. But in any case, and what is important to underline, and in order to not start in a very depressing way, what these scholars like Anna Ching, Donna Haraway, also Isabel Stengers that I have here underline, is that we need and we can't find ways to learn to live in these ruins, even if a new world somehow is not possible. And what Isabel Stengers, for instance, here underlines is that somehow there is a great potential in tales, in rituals, in ways of thinking, in an attempt when we want to reward these ruins. And the attempt to reward these ruins means that we can also reach out to different worlds and to different temporalities, again, anew. So moving on to the second part of my text now, I would like to talk a bit about what the growth can offer. I have to say that I'm not a specialist on the growth at all. I started reading specifically about it some months ago while trying to readdress my own curatorial practice and my own kind of way of working and living in this world. So this is a kind of a small disclaimer, but I will present what I found very interesting and how I think that can be of interest also in our context. Shortly, I should also mention that this is a still from work by Disnovation, who is an artistic duo that are working really a lot on the topic of growth. And they have developed an application where you can see the so-called growth, which is a GDP, and on the lower part, you see the shadow, which is all the costs, all the impact that this so-called growth has on different sectors, on different lands, on the populations. So the term degrowth appeared first in the 70s, in the mid-70s, in a book called Écologie et Politique, written by André Gorge. And what was highlighted already then with the word décroissance was somehow that there was an incompatibility with the so-called capitalist growth with planet's scarce resources. And there was a need to underline that unavoidably at some time human activity will find in the natural world its external limits. There's no way that this will not happen. And what is very interesting is that already back then in the mid-70s, Gortz writes that it's not so much growth itself that it's the problem, but the illusion which it sustains, this dynamic of ever-growing and ever-frustrated needs on which it is based, and the competition which it institutionalizes by inciting each individual to seek to rise above all the others. So already here it implies the problems that growth in relation to competition, in relation to optimization, brings along. And so the growth is to a great extent about respecting the limits of the planet. It's about also acknowledging the mutual dependencies on a social and ecological level, and it very much have to do with principles of conviviality and of coexistence. Interestingly, with the pandemic and the lockdowns, the growth became again quite a topic. And there was a moment, like at the first lockdown, that we thought that things could change, because it felt like that human activity had paused in a way. It felt like that the health was more important than the economic activity, and it felt like things could be done in a way differently. But of course, as soon as ways out were found, it became very clear that we needed to, or it was the idea that one needed to return to the normality of productivity and of progress. So now, having this in mind, I would like to go a bit into the arts field and briefly mention what happens there. So having this in mind, one could say that artists really reflect upon these topics. There's a lot of discussion nowadays about exploitation, about extractivism, about the sustainability principles. And these are like two exhibitions out of many that have specifically discussed degrowth. The first one happened back in 2011, and it was hosted at the Kunstverein Hanover, but also in 2 other venues in Germany, and it was called On the Metaphor of Growth. And it specifically had raised questions about how and why growth is understood as desirable and natural. And the second one that I have here as another example is an exhibition that took place at Savvy Contemporary, an exhibition place in Berlin. That the show was called Raupennimer Sadism, which, if I'm not mistaken, means the very hungry caterpillar. And it refers to the myth of endless consumption. And it exemplified the problematics of growth, but discussing very specifically the paradoxes that one finds when one lives in one of the most powerful economies in the country of Germany. So the list is long here, and I just want to say that, of course, there are many examples that we can discuss. And then there is one thing to discuss these topics in an exhibition context, and there is another kind of thing to really act on the background. For quite some years, there were a lot of contradictions when it came to environmental sustainability in artistic institutions, because there was such a footprint that was left for every one of these projects that were made. And luckily, we can say that in the last years, there is a lot of action taken, and there is a lot of transparency. And this, for instance, one of the most recent biennales, the Helsinki Biennale that just started this year, very interestingly paid special attention to aspects that have to do with traveling, with freight, with waste, something that many other institutions are doing as well. And this all possibly sounds great, and it is good, and it is very important. That's the way to go. Now, my question, though, is this enough? Is this enough? Because the paradox that we still have here and the contradiction that we still have is that we are still facing, at least in the fields of art that I'm working on, an overproduction. We have an overproduction of works, we have an overproduction of events, we have an overproduction of initiatives, and the funds are not necessarily enough for how much it is being produced. Artists keep wanting to and wishing for commissions, even when honoraria are not good enough. Curators need to come up with new ideas. Sometimes things just don't even work out. Institutions keep coming up with projects, and exhibitions or projects might just last for a few days or a couple of weeks. So somehow the logic of the gig economy made it through the cultural field, and a continuous pressure for new ideas, new works, new constellations came in. And when I was thinking a lot about that, and that something is still going very wrong, I came across this paper of Natasha Petrezin-Barceles, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name right, for Slow Institutions, which was published on eFlux a couple of years ago. And it is a very powerful and beautiful text that she specifically highlights the invitation to work differently, to slow down the ways of working and being, and to imagine new ecologies of care as a continuous practice of support, to listen with attention to feelings that arise from encounters with objects and subjects. And the question here is that if we want to be honest with ourselves, do we believe that we can really slow down? And can we really change space? Can we afford doing less without risking staying behind, without risking losing funds, without losing audiences, and so on? So at the last part of my talk, I want to bring in a couple of examples that I find interesting and inspiring. Quickly, I should say here that I use here the image of Chris de Decker, a very interesting practitioner that is publishing an online magazine called Low Tech Magazine. And this is a prototype that he has designed about one can generate energy at home. Now, to move on with my talk. So 3 different examples. I should also mention that this is where the need for different ways of learning and caring also come in. And maybe to return a bit to Isabel Stenger's, the theorist that I mentioned a while ago, I find it very interesting that while she refers to this aspect of living in the ruins, she says that this really demands a capacity to learn from and learn with, to care for what has been learned. And we talked already at this conference about learning and caring, and the thing is that these are words that imply power dynamics, of course. So it's different to learn from and to learn than to learn with. It's different to care for or to care with or to care about. So the question here is, how can we learn, care, and act otherwise? By acknowledging different kind of presence, different temporalities, and to sustain, to support the coexistence of plural experiences and knowledges. And what kind of paradigms could we bring in? What kind of models? So the first model that I would like to refer to, and I think it matches nicely with different examples that we heard already, has to do with how culture and agriculture are brought together. Sakiya is an initiative and a venue at Ramallah in Palestine. It was initiated some years ago by 2 architects, and their own pedagogical approach has to do with the organic connections, as they say, that one has to soil, to land, and to the environment. This is a picture from their website that you can have a look if you want. What is very interesting is that they talk about agriculture and they talk specifically about permaculture as well. And permaculture, of course, is an approach that greatly depends on observation, and that where time also plays a great role. So they embrace the principles of permaculture, and they also embrace the logic of the guild. And these are, this is an idea about the groupings of plants, trees, animals, and insects, and the ways that they operate together, and how they ensure health and productivity. So inspired by this logic of the guild, which is in a way their model, their starting point, they invite people from different backgrounds and generations to work together and to share their values and objectives. And they invite, let's say, artists, agroecologists, musicians, writers to work together. The second example is the initiative of the Forest Curriculum. This is initiated by an artist and a curator, Puhita Guha and Bijan Toto. And the interesting part is that in this case, the starting point is the forest, and more specifically, the Zomia forest, which is a zone that connects the South and Southeast Asia. And this is described as a field where different forms of life come together. So a bit like the Sakiya team works, they also see this as an environment where, as they say, swamps, leaves, mosquitoes, ghosts of the forest live together, where humans are no longer at the center. And as Guha, who has worked a lot on the forest, says, she believes that the forest is where fabulation happens, and the forest can be the paradigm, because it's a very dense ecology. And when it comes to their methodology, for them, the starting point is the writing of Fred Moten and Stefano Harni and the work they have done on the undercommons, where they explain that we should no longer pay attention to the hierarchies of academic knowledge, but rather focus on the ways that we can be together, that we can share thoughts together, and we can learn together in homelessness and brokenness, as they put it. So taking this in mind, they kind of create, let's say, events that are, in a way, encounters. They are encounters that people can learn and spend time. And sometimes, because I asked them at some point, so what do you aim with these workshops? What do you aim with these events? And they said, people spend time together. They talk, they interact, and something happens. Even if something might not happen, still there will be a very valuable experience. So it's not so much about the final outcome, let's say. And yeah, this is a still from an online talk that they gave, where they discuss forest as curatorial practice. And finally, the last example is from the Laboratory for Aesthetics and Ecology, which is formed by 2 curators and 1 editor. And this is a platform, I think all of them come from Denmark, that again, like the forest curriculum in a way, they pay a lot of attention to symbiosis, to forms of coexistence, and to a we that brings together humans, plants, animals, and specifically they're interested in what they call transspecies encounters. If for the 2 examples that I brought before, the starting point was, let's say, the land or the soil and the forest, here the starting point for them is the word ecology, and they return to this word like it's translated in Greek, that ekos has to do with home, and they approach home by talking about the planet itself, and how we need to kind of return to this idea of what our home really is and how we respect it. Their events take place always out in the open, by the sea, on the land, or in different places and surroundings. And most recently, they got a prize for a work that it's called Hosting Lands Between the Ruin, the Field and the Forest. And this is, I think, let's see how it will go, but this is a very kind of interesting project, because they want to do a slowly growing and decentralized exhibition that will unfold over a period of 3 years at 6 different locations, and it will be developed in relation to local initiatives and local people in Denmark. And they hope that this will become an example for other curators and initiatives. So now, taking these examples that I brought in mind, I think it is interesting to pay attention to their starting points, like, as I said, the land, the forest, ecology, like the planet. And also to pay attention to how all these initiatives, these three platforms and initiatives, do not have something like a defined outcome, a fixed plan, a specific target. It is, in a way, it is more open. It is not outcome-oriented, but this is how also the understanding of time changes. And this is how they also aim to create and sustain bonds between individuals, between communities, between species, and between worlds. And within this context, they also allow time for observation. They also allow time for acknowledgement. And maybe to return a bit to degrowth, I have here a quote by Vincent Ligge and Anita Nelson. This is a book published 2 years ago called Exploring Degrowth. It's a very interesting book that says that embracing degrowth is an invitation to go on the inevitably long journey of the decolonization of our growth imaginaries, moving from cultural awareness to a systemic and material transformation, changing our everyday practice. Or in other words, I would say that it is basically about changing our habits, changing how we think about how we work and live. I'm not saying that we should work less, although this would not be a bad idea. I'm saying that we should work differently, and we should find different ways to collaborate with each other. And even we might even have to be a bit more careful with using the word sustainability. I recently was reading a text by artist Carolina Caicedo, who said that we should rather talk about sustenance and not sustainability, because we should talk about how we need to find sources of strength, sources of nourishment, and whereas sustainability in a way implies some sort of continuous exploitation possibly. So this is what I wanted to say. I think we should try as much as possible to escape contradictions and to move towards a reality where we can have open discussion about what growth really means, how environmental goals can be reached, and also how we working in the creative and cultural sector feel in a way safe and secure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daphne. Thank you, everyone. Nice having you here today. I hope you're still breathing, because we have to do walking around. But it's really nice outside. The weather is with us. And we should go and explore and see the first creative district here in Portugal, the Bombarda Creative District. It's a distributed hub. I think that it has been briefly presented. There are also some information. There is also a sheet of information in the entrance if you don't have it. But it's also there is a brief description in the back page of the Vademecum program. So enjoy. And we have also an amazing concert happening from 2 members of the network. And we hope to see you there and have fun and drinks. Of course, nothing of this is obligatory. So enjoy the rest of the day. And tomorrow, yes, tomorrow. No, come on, Dubravka, tomorrow.
So tomorrow, vote for Vasilis. Besides that, okay, so he will tell about ECHN members. For non-ECHN members who still are staying for the 3rd day as well, we can join them at 10 o'clock. Everyone can meet for a coffee at the lovely Jupitec garden. And if you're in the mood, you can stay there, network, and chit-chat with whoever is still free and available, or you have some free time to explore Porto. But then make sure that you are back at Jupitec at 12:30 to just consult your badge here, to grab a quick lunch, and then we're going to the bus to go to Viana do Castelo. So don't miss out. The bus cannot wait for you because we're not 100% sure if you're coming or not. So make sure that you are there. And for ECHN, of course, tomorrow you have a very important day, your assembly. So 10 o'clock at Jupitec, not here, as you said already, and now we are going all together. Yes?
It's freestyle.
They're not going?
So there is, in the sheet about the Bombarda district, there are QR codes that can guide you through the area. And there are 3 nodes that you can follow. There are 3 hubs that somehow define the area. And there are people there to give you information of what to do, discuss a bit about the area, and help you if you want to have tailored information about the place. And there is some information about the upcoming concert also, which kind of will wrap it up, which is at the end, around 7:30, something like that. And there's information about it in the elevator, but in front of the elevator, there's a poster, but also you will have information in all the hubs in the Bombarda district. So thank you again, and See you next.